Rain hammered the neon-lit windows of the roadside diner as three drunk men cornered a young woman near the counter, yanking her hair while broken glass scattered across linoleum. Everyone looked away, studying their coffee cups like scripture. In the corner booth, a weathered man in an old military jacket set down his spoon, muscles coiling beneath worn fabric. Benjamin Carter, single father, just wanted to get his daughter home safely tonight. No one knew that beneath that faded jacket lived skills forged in distant firefights. At the adjacent table, CEO Alexandra Bennett watched everything unfold with calculating eyes. The Crossroads 75 diner stretched along Highway 27 like a glowing refuge against the storm. Its chrome fixtures reflected puddles that pooled beneath worn bar stools. The air hung thick with butter and pancake syrup, cut through by the sharp scent of fresh coffee brewing behind a counter that had seen 40 years of midnight confessions. Behind that counter stood Frank Wilson, 53 years old, with hands that trembled slightly whenever trouble walked through his door. He'd owned this place for 20 years, navigating between truckers and travelers, locals and drifters, always keeping the peace with free refills and a careful distance from confrontation. Benjamin Carter sat with his back to the wall, a habit that would never leave him, despite 5 years out of the Marines. 36 years old, built like someone who worked with his hands, but moved like someone trained for something else entirely. His weathered face bore the kind of lines that came from squinting into desert suns and staying awake through too many dark nights. These days, he worked at a small garage downtown, fixing transmissions and replacing brake pads, his hands now marked by engine grease instead of gun oil. The steady work kept food on the table and a roof over their heads, which was all that mattered since Jennifer died 2 years ago. Beside him, 7-year-old Sophie Carter colored intently in her notebook, drawing elaborate robots with careful precision. Her dark hair fell in the same waves her mother's had, and when she concentrated, she bit her lower lip in exactly the same way. She was Benjamin's anchor, his North Star, the reason he'd promised himself no more violence, no more fights. She'd already lost one parent to cancer. She wouldn't lose another to his temper or his past. 3 booths away, Alexandra Bennett sat alone, her Armani suit incongruous among the vinyl seats and Formica tables. 33 years old, she commanded Bennett Technologies with the same ruthless efficiency her father had taught her, viewing the world through spreadsheets and quarterly projections. She'd stopped here after a late meeting in the city, needing coffee and distance from the endless pressure of board meetings and hostile takeovers. Her fingers moved across her tablet, reviewing merger documents while the storm raged outside. She noticed everything, a skill honed in boardrooms where a single tell could cost millions, but processed it all through the cold lens of cost-benefit analysis. Near the counter, Rachel Martinez slumped on a stool, still wearing her scrubs after a 12-hour shift at Memorial Hospital. 28 years old, exhausted but wired on hospital coffee and adrenaline, she'd stopped for a quick meal before heading home to an empty apartment. The emergency room had been brutal tonight, 2 car accidents and a stabbing, and all she wanted was eggs and toast before collapsing into bed. She hadn't noticed the 3 men at the bar watching her, hadn't registered their slurred comments growing louder with each beer. The trouble started the way it always does in places like this, gradually, then suddenly. The largest of the 3 men, face flushed with alcohol and false courage, stumbled over to Rachel's stool. His friends followed, forming a loose semicircle that trapped her against the counter. Their words came out thick and ugly, comments about her body, her scrubs, what they imagined beneath them. Rachel tried to ignore them, then tried to leave, but one grabbed her wrist, while another moved behind her, cutting off escape. Frank watched from behind the register, his hand hovering near the phone, but calling the cops meant statements, reports, potential lawsuits. His insurance was already sky-high after the last incident 6 months ago. The other patrons found fascinating patterns in their food, in the rain-streaked windows, anywhere but the escalating situation at the counter. The sound of breaking glass changed everything. One of the men had knocked over a water pitcher, shards scattering across the floor. When Rachel tried to step away, the largest one grabbed her hair, yanking her head back. She cried out, a sharp sound that cut through the diner's careful silence. Her hand came up instinctively, catching on more glass, blood beginning to seep through her fingers. Sophie's crayon stopped moving. She looked up at her father with wide eyes, the kind that still believed he could fix anything. Benjamin felt the familiar tightness in his chest, the coiling of old training trying to override newer promises. He'd sworn to Jennifer on her deathbed that he'd keep their daughter safe, that he'd stay out of trouble, that he'd be the father Sophie deserved. But there was another promise too, older and deeper, carved into him through years of service. Protect those who cannot protect themselves. The mental calculation took less than 2 seconds. 3 hostels, intoxicated, poorly positioned. Multiple improvised weapons available: hot coffee pot, metal napkin dispensers, the heavy glass sugar containers. Exit routes clear. Sophie safe in the booth, protected by the table's position. The woman bleeding, outnumbered, terrified. The decision made itself before his conscious mind caught up. Benjamin set down his spoon with deliberate precision. The small sound, somehow carrying across the diner. He stood slowly, his movements controlled and economical. The old jacket hung loose on his frame, hiding the tension in his shoulders, the way his weight shifted to the balls of his feet. He didn't hurry. Hurrying meant mistakes, and mistakes with Sophie watching weren't an option. Alexandra noticed him first, her analyst's mind automatically categorizing him as blue-collar, probably local, definitely poor based on the worn clothes and scuffed boots. Foolish to get involved, she thought. No upside, significant downside risk. Then she saw the way he moved, the deliberate placement of each step. The way his eyes tracked all 3 men while seeming to look at none of them. Her assessment shifted. Military. Definitely. Special operations, possibly. Interesting. Benjamin's voice came out low and steady, pitched to Carrie without shouting. Let her go. Simple, direct. No threats, no posturing. The largest man turned, still gripping Rachel's hair. His drunk brain struggling to process this interruption. He laughed, ugly and dismissive, saying something about minding your own business, about not being a hero. His friends flanked him, bottles in hand, confident in their numbers. The first man moved exactly as Benjamin expected, a wide, telegraphed swing that would have been easy to dodge even without training. Benjamin didn't dodge. He stepped inside the arc, his left hand controlling the man's wrist, while his right drove into the solar plexus, a short, devastating strike that dropped him instantly. No wasted motion, no follow-up strikes. Just enough to neutralize, nothing more. The second man came with the bottle, high and obvious. Benjamin pivoted, using the first man's falling body as a barrier, then swept the attacker's lead leg while controlling the bottle hand. The man went down hard, his head bouncing off the linoleum with a sound that made Frank wince. The bottle rolled away, unbroken. The third man, the one holding Rachel, made the mistake of letting go to face this new threat. Benjamin didn't give him time to set. A chair appeared in Benjamin's hands. When had he grabbed it? Used not as a weapon, but as a barrier, pressing the man back against the counter, pinning him just long enough for a precise strike to the vagus nerve that sent him sliding to the floor. 20 seconds, maybe less. 3 men down, none permanently injured, though they'd feel it tomorrow. Benjamin stepped back, hands already dropping to his sides, non-threatening. His breathing hadn't even changed. Around the diner, phones had appeared, some recording. Others calling 911. Benjamin moved to block Sophie's view, then spoke quietly to the nearest customer. Please don't post anything with my daughter visible. Alexandra found herself standing, though she couldn't remember deciding to move. She grabbed napkins from her table, moving to where Rachel sat, shaking. Blood still seeping from her palm. Up close, she could see the precision of what had just happened. No excessive force, no anger, just mechanical efficiency. She pressed the napkins against Rachel's wound, while watching Benjamin return to his daughter. His entire demeanor shifting from weapon to father in the space of a breath. I'm sorry you had to see that, Benjamin told Sophie, kneeling beside the booth. His voice carried a weight that Alexandra recognized, not regret for the action, but for the necessity. Sometimes we have to protect people who need help, even when we don't want to fight. Sophie looked at the men on the floor, then back at her father. Like when the bigger kids pushed Timothy at school, and you said, "I should tell a teacher?" Exactly like that. But there wasn't a teacher here. And that lady needed help right away. "Is she okay?" Benjamin glanced over to where Alexandra was tending to Rachel, their eyes meeting briefly. Alexandra nodded, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. "She will be," Benjamin said. "She's got help now." The police arrived 12 minutes later, led by Captain Lisa Morgan, a 40-year-old veteran who'd seen enough bar fights to recognize the difference between a brawl and a controlled intervention. She took statements with professional efficiency, noting Benjamin's calm cooperation, the witnesses' consistent accounts, the minimal injuries despite the 3-on-1 odds. She pulled Benjamin aside while the paramedics checked the 3 men. "Military?" she asked quietly. "Marines. 5 years out. Thought so. Clean work. You'll need to come by the station tomorrow for a full statement. But I don't anticipate charges. Clear case of defense of another person." She paused, choosing her words. "Just try to avoid any more situations like this. Not everyone understands proportional force like I do." Rachel approached as the paramedics finished bandaging her hand. Her face pale, but determined. "Thank you," she said to Benjamin. "I don't have much. But let me pay for your dinner at least." "No need," Benjamin cut her off gently. "Just get home safe. Have someone check that hand again tomorrow." Alexandra watched this exchange with growing interest. The man had just taken down 3 attackers. Had every witness in the diner ready to call him a hero. And he wanted nothing from it. No money, no recognition, no social media fame. He just wanted to take his daughter home. It didn't compute in her world of leveraged advantages and calculated returns. "Interesting technique," she said, approaching them. "Krav Maga?" Benjamin studied her for a moment, recognizing the expensive clothes, the careful posture of someone used to being in charge. "Marine Corps, martial arts program, bits of other things. I'm Alexandra Bennett." She extended a hand, noting his firm but not aggressive grip. "Bennett Technologies. Benjamin Carter. I fix cars." Sophie tugged on his jacket. "Daddy. Can we go? I'm tired." "In a minute, sweetheart." He turned back to Alexandra. "If you'll excuse us." "Of course." Alexandra reached into her purse, pulling out a business card, then stopped. He wouldn't call. Men like him didn't call CEOs. Instead, she did something she hadn't done in years. She put the card away. "Drive safely." The storm's getting worse. As they prepared to leave, Sophie did something unexpected. She tore a page from her notebook, one of her robot drawings, and handed it to Alexandra. "This is R7. He protects people when they're scared of the dark." Alexandra took the drawing with surprising care. It showed a robot made of what looked like salvaged parts, a trash can body, flashlight eyes, springs for legs. It was imperfect and wonderful. "Thank you," she said, meaning it more than she'd meant anything in months. The next morning arrived gray and humid, the storm having passed but leaving the air thick with moisture. Alexandra's Bentley rolled through the industrial district, following GPS directions to an address her assistant had reluctantly provided after 3 requests. The car's pristine black exterior looked alien among the auto shops and warehouses, drawing stares from workers on smoke breaks. Carter Automotive Repair occupied a corner lot modest but clean, with 3 garage bays and a small office attached. The sign needed repainting, but the shop itself showed careful maintenance. Tools properly stored. Floors clean despite the oil stains, everything in its place. Benjamin emerged from beneath a Honda Civic as the Bentley parked, wiping his hands on a rag that had seen better days. His expression when he recognized Alexandra mixed surprise with something like resignation. She stepped out, designer heels impractical on the concrete, carrying the same confidence she brought to board meetings. But here, in his workspace, The power dynamic shifted. She was the outsider. "Transmission trouble," she said, gesturing to the Bentley. "Started making a grinding sound this morning." Benjamin knew it was a lie. Bentleys didn't just develop transmission problems overnight. But he played along. "Pop the hood. Let's take a look." While he performed an unnecessary inspection, Sophie appeared from the office, carrying a toolbox almost as big as she was. She wore tiny coveralls with Carter Automotive stitched on the pocket, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. "Daddy, I organized all the socket wrenches like you showed me. Good job, baby. Why don't you show Miss Bennett your workshop while I check her car?" Sophie grabbed Alexandra's hand without hesitation, pulling her toward a corner of the garage converted into a makeshift workshop. Pegboard covered one wall, hung with small tools sized for child hands. The workbench held various projects in different stages, robots built from discarded car parts, a flashlight converted into a projector, a music box made from an old alternator. "This is where I build things," Sophie announced proudly. "Daddy says I'm a natural engineer." "Do you know what that means?" "It means you're good at understanding how things work and making new things from ideas in your head." "Exactly," Sophie beamed, then grew serious. "Are you here because of last night?" "Daddy says we shouldn't talk about it, but Timothy's mom already knows because his sister was there and she put it on Instagram even though Daddy asked her not to." Alexandra felt something twist in her chest. This child, this tiny person in oversized coveralls, was dealing with her father's actions being broadcast to strangers. "No, I'm here because my car needed help. Your dad is very good at fixing things." "He fixes everything," Sophie agreed. "Even hearts, but not the kind that pump blood, the kind that feel sad." Benjamin appeared in the doorway. "Car is fine. No charge for the inspection." Alexandra wanted to insist on paying, to establish some kind of normal transaction between them. But his tone suggested that would be insulting. Instead, she watched him with his daughter, the way he automatically adjusted his stance when she climbed on his shoulders, the practiced ease of single parenthood. "Could I buy you both lunch?" she asked. As a thank you for checking the car. Benjamin started to refuse, but Sophie piped up. "Can we get pizza with pineapple?" "Pineapple on pizza is a crime," Benjamin said, making Sophie giggle. "It's delicious, and you know it." Alexandra found herself smiling genuinely for the first time in weeks. "I happen to agree with Sophie. Pineapple absolutely belongs on pizza." Benjamin looked between them, outnumbered and knowing it. "Fine. But only because it's 2 against 1. They went to Angelo's Pizza House, a local place with checkered tablecloths and a jukebox that still played 45 seconds. Alexandra looked hilariously out of place in her designer suit, but she didn't seem to care, helping Sophie feed quarters into the jukebox, while Benjamin ordered. They talked about safe things, Sophie's school, the shop's history, Alexandra's least classified work projects. But underneath, both adults circled around what wasn't being said. Finally, while Sophie was distracted drawing on her placemat, Alexandra asked quietly, "Why did you really leave the Marines?" Benjamin's hand went unconsciously to his right shoulder. "IED outside Kabul. Shrapnel tore up my shoulder pretty bad. Could have stayed in with a desk job. But that wasn't me. Besides, Jennifer was sick by then. She needed me home." Sophie's mother. "Yeah. Breast cancer. Fought it for 3 years." His voice stayed steady, but Alexandra saw the muscle in his jaw tighten. "She was the strong one, really. I just tried to keep up. I'm sorry. Thanks. But Sophie and I are doing okay. We have our routine, our life. It's enough." That evening, Alexandra sat in her office, reviewing the private investigator's report her security team had compiled. Benjamin Carter. Purple Heart, Bronze Star with Valor. Led a squad through some of the worst fighting in Afghanistan. Returned home to nurse his dying wife while raising their daughter alone. No debt beyond the mortgage, no criminal record, No social media presence, a ghost in the digital age, living quietly, wanting nothing more than peace and stability for his child. Her CFO, Thomas Harper, knocked and entered without waiting for permission. A liberty only he could take. "Heard you were slumming in the industrial district today, conducting market research," she replied smoothly, "on automotive repair. Alexandra, we're a defense contractor. We build guidance systems, not transmissions." She turned her tablet toward him, showing the sketches Sophie had drawn. "Look at these. 7-year-old, no formal training, and she's instinctively designing functional mechanical systems. Her spatial reasoning is exceptional." Thomas studied the drawings with genuine interest. "Impressive. You're thinking scholarship program, STEM outreach?" "I'm thinking we're missing talent because we only look in the expected places." That man, Benjamin Carter, he neutralized 3 threats in under 20 seconds with 0 collateral damage. That's the kind of tactical thinking we need in security consulting. The car mechanic, the decorated Marine, who chose family over career advancement. There's a difference. Thomas leaned back, reading her expression. "This is unlike you. You don't usually care about individual cases." Alexandra stood, walking to the window that overlooked the city. Somewhere out there, Benjamin was probably helping Sophie with homework, making dinner, doing the 1,000 small things that comprised single parenthood. "Did you know I haven't taken a real day off in 3 years? Not one where I wasn't checking emails or reviewing contracts. That's what makes you successful. That's what makes me alone." The admission surprised her, but she continued. "That little girl handed me a drawing of a robot meant to protect people from darkness. When's the last time anyone gave me something without wanting anything in return?" 3 days passed before they met again, this time intentionally. Alexandra had sent a formal letter requesting Benjamin's consultation on a security assessment for their new facility professional. Above board, with a consulting fee that reflected actual market rates rather than charity. He'd called to decline, but she'd persisted, framing it as genuine need rather than favor. He arrived at Bennett Technologies in his truck, parking between Porsches and Teslas without apparent self-consciousness. Security issued him a temporary badge, and Alexandra met him in the lobby herself, causing ripples of speculation among employees who'd never seen their CEO personally escort anyone below the C-suite. The assessment took 4 hours. Benjamin identified 17 vulnerabilities Alexandra's expensive security firm had missed from sightlines that created blind spots to emergency exits that could be too easily blocked. He documented everything in plain language, no jargon or unnecessary complications. When board member William Foster appeared, making cutting remarks about blue-collar insights, Benjamin simply continued his work, neither defending himself nor acknowledging the insult. "You just let him talk to you like that?" Alexandra asked after Foster left. "Fighting every battle means losing the war," Benjamin replied. "He's not worth the energy." That pragmatism, that ability to assess and dismiss threats that weren't actually threatening, impressed her more than any resume could. But it was the call she received an hour later that truly shifted her perspective. Rachel Martinez, the nurse from the diner, had tracked down Alexandra's office number. "I wanted to thank you again," Rachel said, "and to tell you something about Mr. Carter you should know. After that night, he sent someone to check on me, not him. He knew that might make me uncomfortable, but he had a female veteran friend stop by the hospital just to make sure I was really okay. He also paid for my emergency room visit. I found out when I went to handle the bill. He didn't want credit, didn't want thanks. He just did it." Alexandra found Benjamin in the parking lot, loading his tools back into his truck. "Lunch again tomorrow?" she asked. "Sophie can show me more of her robots." He studied her face, reading something there that made him almost smile. "She'd like that. Fair warning, though she's decided you need a robot assistant. She's been designing one all week." The next evening brought another storm, though this one carried more than rain. Alexandra was returning from a board meeting that had gone sideways, Foster pushing for cost-cutting measures that would gut employee benefits. She'd won, barely, but the victory felt hollow. Her phone buzzed with meeting requests, contract reviews, the endless demands of running an empire. She almost didn't notice the van following her until it was too late. The vehicle came alongside at a red light, boxing her in against a construction barrier. 3 men emerged, professional in a way the diner drunks hadn't been. The lead one, identified later as Dennis Walsh, had a simple proposition: sign over certain defense contracts to their shell company or face the kind of scandal that destroyed careers. When she refused, they decided to make their point physically. Benjamin and Sophie were 2 blocks away, heading home from grocery shopping, when he spotted the familiar Bentley trapped against the barrier. His instincts fired before his conscious mind processed the scene. 3 men, coordinated positioning, professional stance. This wasn't random. "Sophie, lock the doors," he said calmly, pulling over. "Call 911. If I'm not back in 2 minutes. Daddy, 2 minutes. Count them." He moved through the rain like something from his past, using parked cars and shadows for cover. The men were focused on Alexandra. Hadn't posted a lookout their first mistake. Benjamin recognized Walsh from the shop earlier that week, asking questions about Alexandra's schedule. He'd thought it was corporate espionage. This was worse. The closest man never saw him coming. Benjamin used a blood choke, quick and silent, lowering the unconscious form gently to avoid noise. The second turned at the wrong moment, catching Benjamin mid-approach. They grappled briefly, but Benjamin had surprise and sobriety on his side. A knee to the solar plexus, an elbow to the temple, and number 2 was down. Walsh heard the commotion, spinning with a pistol already clearing his jacket. Benjamin didn't hesitate, closing distance before Walsh could aim properly, controlling the weapon hand while driving his knee into Walsh's thigh, deadening the leg. The gun skittered across wet pavement as both men went down. Walsh was trained, but Benjamin was trained better. The fight ended with Walsh face down in a puddle, Benjamin's knee in his back, zip ties from Benjamin's truck securing his wrists. Alexandra sat in her car, hands steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. She'd watched the entire thing through her rearview mirror, seen Benjamin appear from nowhere like some guardian angel in a wet work jacket. When he knocked on her window, she lowered it without hesitation. "You okay?" he asked. "Yes." "How did you?" "Saw your car. Recognized trouble." He glanced back at the 3 men, all breathing but thoroughly neutralized. "Police are coming." Sophie already called. As sirens approached, Alexandra made a decision that would have seemed impossible a week ago. "I want to hire you, officially. Head of Physical Security for Bennett Technologies." "I fix cars," he said automatically. "You fix problems." "I have problems." She gestured to the men on the ground. Significant ones, apparently. Captain Morgan arrived with 4 units, taking in the scene with professional appreciation. "Mr. Carter, we really need to stop meeting like this." "Agreed," Benjamin said. These 3 were attempting to coerce Miss Bennett. Walsh there mentioned specific defense contracts, suggested this was corporate espionage, escalated to physical threat. The investigation would later reveal connections to a competitor trying to muscle into Bennett's defense contracts, but that night, all that mattered was that Alexandra was safe. As statements were given and evidence collected, Sophie waited in Benjamin's truck, watching everything through rain-streaked windows. When Alexandra approached to thank her for calling the police, Sophie handed her another drawing. "This is for you. It's Robot Guardian. He watches for danger so people can focus on their work." Alexandra studied the drawing, noting the remarkable detail for a 7-year-old's work. "He looks very capable," Sophie said simply. "Like Daddy." The board meeting the following week was contentious. William Foster led the opposition, his face red with indignation, as Alexandra proposed hiring Benjamin as head of physical security. "He's a mechanic," Foster slammed his hand on the conference table. "We have contracts with professional security firms, not some vigilante who happens to know how to throw a punch." "That vigilante," Alexandra responded coolly, "identified 17 critical vulnerabilities our professional firm missed. He also prevented what the FBI is now investigating as corporate espionage involving 3 of our competitors." One incident doesn't qualify. His military record speaks for itself. Thomas Harper interrupted, sliding a folder across the table. Bronze Star with Valor. Purple Heart. Multiple commendations for tactical excellence. His security assessment was more thorough than anything we've received in 5 years. The board voted 7-3 in favor. Foster's faction outnumbered but not silenced. As members filed out, Foster stopped near Alexandra. "This pet project of yours will backfire. Mark my words." "Noted," Alexandra replied, already turning to her next meeting. Benjamin accepted the position with conditions that raised eyebrows throughout the corporate hierarchy. He would work school hours only, with complete flexibility for Sophie's needs. No overnight travel, no weekend obligations except for genuine emergencies. Half his time would be spent on site, half working from his shop, which would continue operating. The salary was substantial but not excessive, and he refused the company car, keeping his truck. "You could have asked for twice this," Alexandra told him over coffee in her office. "I asked for what I need," Benjamin replied. "More money doesn't make Sophie happier. Time with her does." The first month brought predictable resistance. Foster's faction questioned every decision Benjamin made, from personnel changes to security protocols, but results spoke louder than politics. Break-in attempts dropped to 0. Employee safety incidents decreased by 60%. The security team, initially skeptical, quickly learned to respect Benjamin's approach, firm but fair, demanding but supportive. It was Sophie who truly changed the dynamic. Benjamin would bring her to the office occasionally when school was out. And she became an unexpected ambassador. She fixed the CFO's grandson's broken toy robot. She taught the receptionist's daughter to code using a children's programming language. She drew personalized robot designs for anyone who asked, each one thoughtfully crafted to address their specific needs or fears. "Your daughter's remarkable," Dr. Elizabeth Ross, head of R&D, told Benjamin one afternoon. "Her spatial reasoning tests off the charts. Have you considered advanced programs?" "She's 7, Benjamin replied. "Let her be 7. But Alexandra had been watching too. She saw how Sophie approached problems, breaking them down systematically, testing solutions with patience beyond her years. During a Bring Your Child to Work day, Sophie had solved a puzzle that R&D had been using as a cognitive test for interns. She'd done it in 12 minutes. The average for MIT graduates was 20. The conversation about Sophie's future happened over dinner at Benjamin's house, a modest 2-bedroom that radiated warmth in a way Alexandra's penthouse never could. Sophie was showing Alexandra her latest creation. A robot made from an old vacuum cleaner that could sort recycling. While Benjamin cooked spaghetti from scratch. "I want to sponsor her education," Alexandra said quietly, watching Sophie work. "Not charity investment. She has a gift that should be nurtured." Benjamin's hands stilled over the cutting board. "She doesn't need to be pushed. I've seen what that does to kids. Not pushed, supported. There's a difference." Alexandra chose her words carefully. Optional programs, summer camps for engineering, resources available if and when she wants them, everything at her pace, her choice. "Why?" Benjamin asked, though something in his tone suggested he already knew. Alexandra watched Sophie explain her sorting algorithm, hands moving animatedly. "Because she reminds me of who I might have been if someone had seen me as more than grades and achievements. Because talent like hers shouldn't be limited by circumstances." She met his eyes. "And if I say no, then you say no, and we never discuss it again. But I hope you won't. Not for me, for her." That night, after Sophie was asleep, they sat on the porch watching storms roll in over the city. Alexandra had kicked off her heels, sitting in one of the mismatched chairs Benjamin had restored, looking more relaxed than he'd ever seen her. "This isn't what I expected," she said. "The job. Any of it. You. Sophie. This." She gestured to the modest porch, the quiet street, the absence of everything that usually defined her world. "I haven't felt this quiet in years." Benjamin understood the constant noise of ambition, the endless climbing towards summits that kept getting higher. He'd left that behind in the desert. "Quiet's good," he said. "Lets you hear what matters." Thunder rolled in the distance, but neither moved to go inside. There was something happening between them, slow and careful, built on respect rather than attraction, though that was there too. Benjamin hadn't dated since Jennifer, hadn't wanted to. But Alexandra fit into their life without forcing it, bringing her own broken pieces that somehow matched theirs. "Sophie asked if you were going to be her mom," Benjamin said suddenly. Alexandra's breath caught. "What did you tell her? That you were our friend, that anything else was complicated adult stuff?" He looked at her. "Is it complicated?" Benjamin looked at her, this brilliant, driven woman who'd somehow chosen to spend her evening on his porch instead of at some corporate function. "Everything worth doing is complicated." 6 months later, the annual Bennett Technologies Gala showcased the company's success and Benjamin's impact on their security division. But in the kitchen of Benjamin's house, a different celebration was happening. Sophie's robot had won the state science fair for her age group. The trophy sat on the counter next to a cake Alexandra had attempted to bake, slightly lopsided but made with determination. "It's perfect," Sophie declared, hugging Alexandra around the waist. "Robot chef approves." Benjamin watched them, his daughter and this woman who'd entered their lives through violence but stayed through choice. The old jacket hung on its hook by the door, retired but not discarded. Like the parts of himself he thought were gone, but had only been sleeping. "I have something for you," Alexandra told Sophie, pulling out an envelope. Inside were acceptance letters to 3 summer engineering programs. "Only if you want. No pressure." Sophie's eyes went wide. "Can Daddy come too?" "Actually," Victoria smiled. "They need an instructor for the robotics safety module." "I may have recommended someone." Benjamin shook his head, smiling. "You planned this." "I strategized. It's what I do." But her smile was warm, real in a way it rarely was in boardrooms. "Besides, someone has to make sure those kids don't build anything too dangerous." Later, after Sophie had fallen asleep on the couch, clutching her trophy, Alexandra and Benjamin stood in the kitchen doing dishes, a mundane task that felt more intimate than any corporate dinner. "I love her," Alexandra said quietly, meaning Sophie. "I know," Benjamin replied, understanding the weight of that admission from someone who'd built walls around her heart like he'd built them around his life. "I'm starting to love you too," she continued, hands still in soapy water. "Is that okay?" Benjamin turned her to face him, seeing the vulnerability she never showed anyone else. They kissed there in the kitchen, with dishes half done and Sophie snoring softly in the next room. While outside the storm finally broke, washing the city clean. It wasn't a fairy tale, ending those didn't exist in their world of board meetings and bullet points, of single parenthood and security threats. But it was real, built on foundation, stones of respect and understanding, of shared dinners and homework help, of a little girl who drew robots and 2 adults who'd forgotten how to trust until they met each other. The old military jacket stayed on its hook, a reminder of who Benjamin had been. But now, there were new hooks beside it. Alexandra's coat, Sophie's backpack, the small accumulations of a family being rebuilt from salvaged parts. Like Sophie's robots, they were making something new from pieces that shouldn't fit together but somehow did. In the morning, there would be meetings in school, contracts and science projects, all the complications of merging 2 very different worlds. But tonight, in this small house with its mismatched furniture and walls covered in robot drawings, they were simply 3 people who'd found each other through chance and choice, through violence and tenderness, through the strange alchemy that turned strangers into family. Benjamin carried Sophie to bed, her trophy still clutched in her small hands. Alexandra followed, straightening the blankets with unpracticed care. They stood there for a moment, watching her sleep, this child who'd brought them together by teaching them both that protecting others meant more than protecting yourself. "Stay," Benjamin said simply. Alexandra nodded. No negotiation needed. Outside, the city hummed with its endless energy. But inside this small space, everything was quiet, except for the soft breathing of a child and the settling of two hearts, finally finding home.